Good evening, my name is Johnny Stark and I'm going to be telling you about phonetics and phonology, the differences between those two, and some other concepts regarding to the English pronunciation. Let's start. Let's start with phonetics. Phonetics studies the properties of speech sounds, meaning it analyzes how sounds are made regardless of the language. In phonetics, we try to describe sounds by their articulatory features. For instance, when we talk about consonants, they are categorized by manner of articulation, place of articulation, or whether they are voiced or unvoiced. Here we have a chart of the International Phonetic Alphabet, and in it we can see sounds that are plosive, affricative, fricative, approximant, nasal, and they can be produced in the front of your vocal tract or in the back. Like in the sound P or B, they are produced in the front of your vocal tract, and they have a plosive sound because you release some air when you produce them. And then we have sounds like K or J that are produced in the back of the vocal tract, like the H sound, which is present in words like hotel. On the other hand, we have vowels that are classified by their height or backness. As for height, there are vowels that are produced high in the vocal tract, others that are produced in the middle, and there are others that are produced in the low, which is also called open. As for backness, we have front, central, and back. For instance, the word pit will be high and front. We have the schwa sound in words like pittance, which is produced in the middle and central of your vocal tract. And then we have vowels that are produced in the back. We have words like put, pot, and pot. Now let's move on to phonology. Phonology works out how sound patterns are used in one particular language in order to convey meaning. And for that, we need to know the notion of a phone. No, not that phone. In phonetics, phones are any sound in human language. Phonology groups these phones in so-called phonemes. Phonemes are abstract categories of sound. They are also called segments because they are the smallest units of speech sound within the language. And the process by which we obtain these segments is called segmentation. Here are some examples of phonemes in English. When we talk about phonemes, we always put the phoneme itself in between slashes. That basically says this is a mental category. It is only a psychological product. So when we speak, we never produce phonemes. They only exist in our minds. When we are actually speaking though, that's when we use allophones. An allophone is the phonetic realization of a phoneme. So each phoneme can be realized as one or more different allophones depending on the environment in which that sound appears. And by environment, we mean by which other sounds that phoneme is surrounded. For example, if we take the phoneme T, when it is actually spoken or pronounced as an allophone, it can maybe take one of these allophones rather than the other. The concept of allophone is a lot like Bruce Wayne and Batman. You only get Bruce Wayne or Batman. You don't get both of them appearing at the same time, at the same place, because they are the same person, right? So, if it is in an office building, somebody having a fancy party, nothing exciting happening, who are you likely to get? Probably Bruce Wayne, right? But when there's a crime happening and people are in danger, who is more likely to show up? Batman, right? So, they appear in very predictable environments. That's the thing with these allophones. They are predictable. You can predict when they're going to happen. You don't get Batman and Bruce Wayne at the same place, just like you don't get either of these sounds in the same place in English. So let's take a word like stop, and let's take a word like top. You might think that both of these words have the same T in them, but they don't. They're actually two different sounds. With the word stop, we find the unaspirated T, whereas with the word top, we have the aspirated T with the puff of air that you produce when you pronounce the word. You can feel the difference if you put your palm in front of your mouth when you pronounce those two words. When you say stop, you don't feel as much puff of air that you feel when you say top. That puff of air is represented by the superscript H next to the T. Another allophone of the phoneme T, it's the glottal one. It can occur in words like kitten or Clinton. Another allophone of the phoneme T is the T that sounds like an R, and you can find that in words like butter. Both of these two phonemes are more likely to happen in American English. And then we have what linguistics refer to as an unreleased stop, and it very often happens in an utterance final position, as in, hey, where did you get that cat? And your tongue stays in your alveolar ridge, and it doesn't actually release. So you can mix all of these allophones in whatever way you want, and it won't change the meaning of the word. Nonetheless, if you use a different phoneme, then you will change the meaning of the word. For example, in the word top, if you change the first phoneme, the T, for K, as in cop, then we have a different word. That is what it's called minimal pairs. A minimal pair is when you change one phoneme in the word and it completely changes the meaning of the word. So to conclude about phonetics and phonology, we can say that phonetics reveals how sounds are made and it is independent from languages. You can think of it as the physical representation of sounds. Or to put it in an analogy, think of it as individual ingredients in a recipe. In contrast, phonology is the study of the systematic patterning and organization of speech sounds in a language. It depends on the knowledge of the language. Think of it as the mental representation of sounds. Or to extend the recipe analogy, it helps us understand and analyze what we can get by combining the different individual sounds which we study in phonetics in order to obtain something with meaning. Now let's talk about received pronunciation. RP stands for received pronunciation, which is an accent of Great Britain, probably most widely taught as the accent that we are meant to learn in language schools around the world. The RP is defined as the regionally neutral middle class accent of England. Regionally neutral. What that means is that by hearing this accent, one cannot know where in the UK that speaker is from. So they might be from Devon, Wales, London, Yorkshire, anywhere. This accent is not from one particular place. Now, it has also been called over the past 50 to 100 years the Queen's English, because people assume that the Queen speaks with the received pronunciation. Now whether she actually does it is a topic for another time. In England, they often associate it with Southern British English speakers. They call them standard Southern British English speakers. However, not many people in England speak like that. Probably less than 2 or 3% these days, and it is an accent that carries class implications, which may or may not be true. It is often associated with people in the monarchy or the royal family, people in position of power, or wealthy people. It is also called BBC English. And although there did used to be a time when most of the news presenters on the BBC were required to have a received pronunciation accent, now society has changed and is more inclusive, so people from different parts of the UK are able to get jobs in the BBC. Accent versus dialect. When we speak about dialect, we are talking about a different variety of speaking that is mutually intelligible within the same language. The properties of a dialect are that it is mutually intelligible. For example, if a Mexican speaks with an Argentine and an Argentine speaks with someone from Spain, they can all understand each other. Even if they use different words or slangs or expression, they can still understand each other. Pronunciation. It's the way we pronounce certain words. For example, the difference between American pronunciation and British pronunciation can be noticed when we use words like water, water, daughter, daughter, garage, garage, tomato, tomato. These are some examples with American Standard English and British Standard English. Another property is the syntax or the grammar. Let's take, for example, if we want to express that we possess something. With the American English, we would say, I have a dog. And with the British, I have got a dog. We can also notice this when we make questions. Do you have time? Have you got time? Another property is the vocabulary. This would encompass phrases, slangs, and expression. For example, if we say, I don't have time, in America, you are more likely to hear, I ain't got no time. Whereas in the UK, you are more likely to hear, I haven't got time. Or we can use different words for the same thing. For example, I took the lift. I took the elevator. I live in a flat. I live in an apartment. I need to go to the petrol station. I need to go to the gas station. These are the properties of a dialect. An accent, on the other hand, doesn't have many properties. It is simply a difference in the pronunciation. However, we can distinguish two main properties. One, it is that it's not mutually intelligible. That is to say, that if we speak Spanish to someone who speaks French, and neither of us have knowledge of each other's language, we might not understand each other. This means it's not mutually intelligible. The other property that we can distinguish is that it transcends languages. That happens when we learn and speak a different language from our own native language. Let's say that if I speak Spanish and I try to speak English, I may carry some of the pronunciation features of the Spanish language into the English language. We can notice this when we use words that have the T sound. I could either say time or I could say time. Therefore, accents manifest across languages. And the four most common sources of variations are the vowel system, rhoticity. I will explain these terms in a moment. Allophones of T, and dental fricatives. Regarding to the vowel system, in order to give just a short explanation, we can say that because the English vowel system contains an ample variety of vowels, it is considered to be fairly unstable. And for this reason, varieties of English often have very different pronunciations of English vowels. As for rhoticity, rhoticity is what we think of most often the primary difference between an American accent and a British accent. So if we ask an American native speaker to say the word R, they would pronounce it as I just did, R, R. But if we ask a British speaker to pronounce this word, on the other hand, we would probably get aw, right? So rheticity is basically this quality that some dialects pronounce the R's as R's and some others don't pronounce the R as R's. And that's what rheticity is. A dialect that pronounces all the R's is called rhotic, and the ones that skip some of the R's are called non-rhotic dialects. About the allophones, I have already explained this some minutes ago, so let's skip to dental fricatives. With the dental fricatives, we have the sound the as in think and the as in this. However, some dialects pronounce these words quite differently. Let's compare, for example, the American pronunciation and the received pronunciation. There is no surprise here, they both pronounce the words in the same way, think and this. Nevertheless, if we speak about Cockney English, then we pronounce it as think and this. In the Indian accent, for example, they pronounce it as think and this. So these are some variations in pronunciation depending on the accents and region. Now, I have given a lot of information in this opportunity, and I hope I have covered some of the questions you may have had when you clicked on the video. I hope you liked it, and thanks for watching. See you soon.